I think it's the unknown that terrifies me. And I think that's another mandatory step that everyone on this call has taken. And some people take it to the finish line and some people don't.
Welcome to another episode of the Operator Mindset powered by ActI. Today we have a super special show. First, let me introduce my co-host for this show. First time we've ever done this, but I'm super excited about it. Jason Elliott is an empty nesting father who's been married for 30 years. He spent his entire life on the front lines, first as a certified paramedic and a civilian crew chief, now as a physician's associate delivering trauma and critical care and pediatric critical care services coast to coast. The best clinicians he's ever worked with alongside, which is why he's now part of an ecosystem that helps his colleagues transition from beside patient care to a beachside lifestyle, creating lives that never have it to vacation from. Jason doesn't just talk about transformation, he lives it, and his bond with Michael Holden was forged in fire. 8+ hours of navigating a health crisis together in a third world country during a transformational event in Fiji where trauma became a catalyst for unshakable brotherhood. Jason, welcome to the show, and I'm super honored to have you as my co-host for today.
Howie, your words land, and I received that. Thank you very much, sir. I am super excited to be here, part of this show. Thank you for the invite. I know when we were chatting a little bit about what we can utilize this shared experience for, the first person that I thought about was Michael. And maybe it's because we recently came off of such a powerful bonding experience. While yes, not in a comfort of the world that we are used to, but truly in a third world country. And let me just share with you and who all that's watching is that Michael Holden's story doesn't start with success. It actually, like you said, Howie, started in crisis. And we met in Fiji, yes, at a transformation event, and with fun energy. It wasn't in a boardroom. It wasn't on stage. It was in the midst of a scuba diving accident, which was a moment of chaos. And that accident in that third world country brought us to a hospital where we spent a few hours, and it was many hours thereafter that we were connected with. And it was because I was there because of my role, but see, Michael was there because life just had to remind him how fragile everything was. And what was born out in that trauma was not just a friendship. I'll be honest with you. It was really a brotherhood that has been grounded in faith. And yes, you had mentioned the 8 hours that followed. We didn't just talk about business. What we talked about was what really actually mattered. And Michael, I'll put words in his mouth because I don't think he just heard it. He actually lived it. And his transformation during that time on that island was so powerful that subsequently he brought his daughter to experience what he experienced. And then he brought Becca, his wife. And that's not just theory, right? That Howie is a man who doesn't just change. He brings the people he loves into that change with him. So that's why we're here today, Howie, is you're going to hear Michael's story, not because it's polished, not because it's curated, but because it's real. And
Right.
I truly believe that his message needs to be heard. And Michael, let me just kind of introduce you to a now business partner of mine and somebody that I am truly developing a brotherhood and a relationship with, and Howie Zales. And we're here on the Operator Mindset, and he is the orchestrator behind this. It's a podcast that isn't just content. It truly is a shared experience. It's a platform that is built for people who want to execute, not just consume, right? He's a licensed Heart of Influence curator. You yourself, Michael, have been part of the Heart of Influence before. And Howie has mastered his lever 2 execution. And Howie doesn't just interview guests. He creates the conditions for truth to surface in transformation to be witnessed by thousands. Thousands who are hungry to hear stories. And he built the operator mindset with intentionality, not hoping that it works, but knowing exactly how influence compounds and how you combine preparation, presentation, and the willingness to lead. And how we understand that stories are powerful. And Michael, your story is more than just words. It is what you have lived. And it belongs in every person who's ever wondered if there's truly purpose behind pain. And in their crisis, that becomes the calling. And in a community that actually really gets it. So tonight, Howie, I'm going to turn this over to you because this truly is a gift. You've created a space here on the Operator Mindset that is for stories to be told at the level that it deserves and with the mastery that it's required. And it's truly my honor to connect you with Michael and Michael with Howie because this is the moment where transformation doesn't just happen, it continues.
Well, received, Jason. Thank you very much. It's my honor to have both of you here, and my honor to help bring your story to life, Michael. So thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us. I really appreciate it. So let me start off by asking the first question. Michael, when people ask you what you do now, how do you answer that question differently than what it might have been 2 or 3 years ago?
Oh boy, that's a put me on the spot question because you see, today is a very special day. Part of my story was that I quit an executive position without having a job, and I quit because I wasn't aligned with the spirit of how I was created, and it was physically making me sick. But I was blessed. I had a top 1% job, and I'm the breadwinner, or I was at the time, and I said, I just can't do this anymore. And what evolved was this pathway that allowed me to meet Jason, now has allowed me to meet you. And what I would say is I took the leap of faith and was rewarded in ways where it wasn't a worldly reward. It was more of an alignment with myself award. And I then in my journey looked to create officially something called the authenticity quotient, the AQ. If you go to my website, you'll see there's an assessment that gauges a person's realness with oneself. And so I saw that my AQ was so wildly aligned that the pain was enough to create a new quotient. And without getting too much into it, IQ, EQ, AQ, there was the IQ, there was the EQ later in the 2000s, and now I'm proposing the AQ. So I would say, hey, I'm finally aligned. But today's a special day because 6 months ago, out of pure fear and in a scarcity mindset, I went back to corporate. And, I guess hot off the press, I plan on resigning tomorrow.
Wow.
and I plan on resigning tomorrow. It's not something that comes easily, or I almost feel like I shouldn't be smiling about it. But at the same time, my AQ became misaligned again. And here I was expecting a different outcome, doing the exact same thing. I had this eloquent 18-month journey that was very much spirit-led, universe-led, quantum force-led, however you want to call it, and I was carried. And in being carried, I still reacted in fear and went back to the old me. In the 6 months that I've worked with this firm, I've gained 25 pounds. I've been in the hospital 3 times. I'm just coming from the hospital in this week. And it's just the same thing that happened last time. And as a father, I have my wife, I have my 3 kids, we have our dog. I have duties to provide for the family. And so I say, in a scarcity mindset, in fear, I went back to what I thought was the security that this world always told me was security. But my soul and my body is saying no.
Right.
And so it's a very interesting time. I mean, hot off the press, I'm being pulled back into this alignment, authenticity journey. And it's almost against my will. It's almost against my will. So it'll be interesting to see, Howie.
Well, good luck and congratulations. I'm sure you'll do a great job. And I did read your book, The Authenticity Mindset. I listened to it, and you had so many great points in it. So thank you for bringing that forward. Um, you spent
Thanks
20
for
years in
listening to
corporate.
it.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for listening to
Oh, of course, of course.
it.
So I know you spent before leaving a job 20 years in corporate and finance at JP and Wells Fargo. What was the identity you were performing in that world, and when did you first sense that what was going on wasn't actually really you?
Yeah, I think anyone in finance or on Wall Street would agree we're all on 30-day contracts. And so the identity was always performance based. My ego, my identity, my sense of accomplishment, contribution, and self worth was always based off the next 30-day report and where I stood on it in comparison to my peers with whatever revenue we were trying to charge. And that was 20 plus years of my career of incessantly living a performance-based life versus living a faith-based life or an alignment-based life, which is why it doesn't work. It's not sustainable. It works for all the guys earning on top of you, but doesn't work for any of the people who believe that there's something more with why they're here.
Right.
The true pyramid is what I'm hearing you say. How you're working for somebody else that's going to benefit off of everything that they expect you to do. Am I hearing you correctly?
That's 100% of most hierarchies in a capitalistic society. I
Sure.
think if you're aligned with what you're doing, or if you believe in the structure, the medical field has its issues in that
Yeah.
hierarchy. Teachers have these issues in the hierarchy. If I'm Howie and I'm in corporate and I'm traveling all throughout the world and I have to videotape this, that, and the other, I'm living in that hierarchy. It's everywhere. But it works if you're in alignment.
Right. So let's hear more about Fiji. Tell us about Fiji. What happened there that created the conditions for everything else that came after?
Yeah. Do you want me to say it, or do we want to put Becca on the line here?
Well, let's start with you. Your
We'll
your
start with me.
great first, and then happy to hear from your beautiful bride as well.
So here's the real story. I called back and I said, I resign. And she goes, great. What firm are we going to? I'm like, oh, about that. And she goes, get home. And in my life, Becca's never been like so authoritative. She was pretty much like, get your butt home right now. And I was like, oh, yes, ma'am. And I get home and she ultimately, we're sitting in the car and she puts the phone right to my ear and says, you're going to talk to this person. So I'm like, okay. And I end up talking to this person who happens to be a Tony Robbins representative. I put it on pause and I give her the dirtiest look ever. Like, are you flipping kidding me? Tony Robbins? What? And then I put it off mute. And I'm really skeptical about all of this. The career I was in, people would constantly give you tickets for this, that, or the other. And maybe a year ago, someone gave me tickets for a Tony Robbins woo woo whatever, and that's how I'd refer to it then. And I said, you know what? I think my wife might benefit from this. So Becca did a COVID Tony Robbins thing based off a gift from someone to me. And then before you know it, I'm on the phone with this rep. This rep explains to me ultimately, like, okay, there's these like tiers to this program. First, you go to Unleash the Power Within. Then second, you go to Date with Destiny. And then third, you go to this Fiji trip. And I said, well, I just quit my job and I want to react to it with just massive action. And she's like, wow, that's funny that you use those words. I'm like, I don't know. So she says, well, UPW is in 90 days. I'm like, too far out, and she goes, well, we have Fiji. And now I'm somewhat brash and I'm kind of embarrassed about my reaction initially. because I'm like, you're a salesperson. You're going to sell me stuff to the Tony Robbins lady. Her name's Holly. She's wonderful. And so she says, well, Fiji is actually open and it's in 10 days. But these things sell out like years in advance. And so she's like, I'd have to check if I can get it. Let me get back to you. And I said, well, I could do 10 days. That's what I'm interested in. Yeah, get back to me. So within I don't know, 10 minutes, she calls me back. And again, embarrassed about my reaction, but I pick up the phone and I'm like, let me guess, there's a magical opening. And Holly says, Mike, may I ask what your religion is? I said, no, I'm Catholic, Christian. And she goes, I'm Catholic. And she goes, I just have to tell you, yes, I am a salesperson, but literally God himself is telling you, you need to go to Fiji. And this comment humbled me. It silenced me. I was like, I went straight to pause. And I was like, you know what? I can't argue. I'm in. And only later did I come to learn those sessions do book out years in advance. And the fact that I was able to get one 10 days at the hotel was actually at the location. It was God rolling out the red carpet. I don't know what else to say. And for me, I never experienced Tony Robbins before. I thought he was woo-woo. I thought Tony Robbins is a guy that my firm would cut a check to come and talk to people, and we'd cut him a check and he'd go, right? And I get there, and I am not accustomed to the social norms of the Tony Robbins crew. I literally get to Fiji in a suit. People still comment about that. I arrive, I walk up to the main lobby, and I'm like, all right, I've been traveling for 30 hours. Where's the bar? And the lady's like, bar? And I was like, bar. She's like, there is no bar. And if you saw my face, it's like, there's no bar? And I had no idea what I was coming to. I had no idea that people hugged each other, which was weird for me. And then I grew to love it. That's another story. I had no idea that I was taking a cleanse. And I had no idea that I was going to not be drinking for this time in Fiji. And it turned out that it ended up being one of the most epic transformational experiences of my life.
Wow.
And
amazing.
you speak of this Tony Robbins guy. Did you meet him? Did you say hi to him? Did you hug him when you were there? Tell me. You said a lot about Tony Robbins. You didn't believe in a lot of the things initially, and then you're magically flown to a country on the other side of the world in Fiji, I think 26 hours away from home, to go get brainwashed by this big giant Tony Robbins guy. Did you see him, hug him, and actually engage with him while you were there?
Tony Robbins wasn't there in person for a single second of the entire experience. Wow. Tony Robbins is an awesome label. Tony Robbins has definitely earned his right to be a premier coach, right? But the people that attended were the paramount experience for me. That authentic interaction was life-changing. It was life-changing. So kudos to Tony. He had a great curriculum. I really enjoyed the curriculum. That particular one was life and wealth mastery. The curriculum was secondary to experiencing the curriculum with the people, which was the whole experience. That was it all.
And that's what I wanted to highlight is it is the experiences that we have that create the memories that last forever, right? What we leave behind is not what is etched in stone, rather what is woven into the lives of others. And there can be plenty of mentors, movie stars, high figures of influence that don't have to be present to be influential. And what I'm very present to is I was there on that island for a role that I was not playing, but I was operating in a role to help be present for people that experience stuff that you did, which wasn't always what you intended to go for. right? We started this by sharing our relationship, our brotherhood was born out of crisis. And it wasn't about going there to hear a seminar to get transformed or to do a cleanse, as you say. But it was truly what I saw in you, Michael, was a transformation from that guy who arrived looking for the bar to the guy who left that shared and poured out his heart and his soul to somebody he's never met before. Given the situation, there was definitely some fear in your eyes, as you were going through what you were going through. But what we were able to experience together didn't just transform you, Michael. There was an immediate transformation for myself. And I am grateful for having that opportunity in crisis to do that with you. And so thank
Amen,
you.
brother.
Thank you
Love
for
that.
being receptive and open to listening to your wife and picking up the phone and getting on a plane and resetting what needed to be reset. So, Howie, let me turn it back over to you, but I just needed to make sure you understood that it's not about the person, but it's about the experience. And it's about what happens after that experience that you truly wanted to share with the ones that you love the most. And before we go on to that, just in, let's say, 3 or 4 sentences, very short, when I say what happened afterwards, tell us a little bit about, why and who you brought with you or sent after you experienced that.
I just want to add to, I think we as humans are created to authentically interact with each other. And I think we, in fact, actually yearn for it. I think each and every one of us yearn to have a community, authenticity, mutual respect. I refer to it as a social contract where we're all in it to win it together. We help each other. And most of us live in worlds where you're just not allowed to fully do that, i.e., most corporate folks, right? Most people working in an institutionalized some sort of hierarchy. And what became so eye-opening was like I got there, had no idea where I was going, what I was doing there, and I just stumbled upon these people who happened to be open and honest with each other. And what was so fascinating for me is how immediately I just complete like osmosis, I got right into it. All walls dropped, and it was spooky to me because it's never happened. Like I was always taught when things got hard, you swallow hard, you shut up. My dad died in my arms in my 20s. I went and applied for a different job 3 days later. Or when I got diagnosed with cancer for the first time, I swallowed hard. I went back to work. When I got it the second time, I was like, okay, I went back to work. This was not how society trained me, but this is also not how God created me. And therein was like the enormous, enormous rub that I always knew. I just never knew how to support. And then so being in an environment where everyone's somewhat feeling this, vibing off the same tune, it was life changing.
Well, I am not confused, Howie, that this is the right person to have their shared experience and story told. So, Howie, back to you, sir.
I totally understand what you're saying, Michael. I've experienced something similar in the unblinded community, so I totally understand what you're saying. You mentioned shifting from performance grinding, forcing to surrendered faith-based leadership. What does surrendered leadership actually look like to you?
Well, the first category was when I initially left corporate, and I had no intention of writing a book, none. And in this journey of surrendering, I think it's important to say by that time, I went to the right schools. I had the 25 years of experience. I did the work. I think that's an important disclaimer. I worked my ass off my whole life and was not fulfilled. And I found in that Fiji group that a lot of people, Howie, including yourself, most people get to a spot in their life where that's the case. You're not fulfilled. You've done all the motions you were trained to do, and you're like, there's got to be more. And by the way, my time is dwindling and my energy is dwindling. And it's like, there's just got to be more. So I had no intention of writing a book. I wrote a book. Before you know it, I get approved by Forbes to publish the book. That ended up being a typical Forbes thing. I decided to self-publish. Typical Forbes thing is they wanted $250,000 to publish the book. I published the book myself. I wasn't in, that wasn't the reason why I wrote this book on authenticity. And after that, things started to just happen. I was asked to be a keynote speaker at Cornell University to talk about finance. I started getting invited to all these different podcasts. I started going and I did a book launch in Wilmette, Illinois, and I got picked up by a big company to do it. And so all these different pathways that I didn't plan for started etching out. And then before you know it, poof, the Michael E. Holden website is somehow adopted. And I had no intention of creating this website. And I had no intention of creating an assessment on your AQ. And it's like, when I watched how this whole thing started coming together, you would think that I sat down and for months categorized a 30, 60, 90-day plan of like concisely what each of these things were. Well, it wasn't that at all. Like not even, it was zero of that. But if you evaluated my resume right now, you'd see my entire life was the 30, 60, 90-day plan. So surrender leadership is taking your skills, bringing them to the environment that you're in, having no expectations other than to serve and show up. And then all of a sudden the pathway unfolds itself. It's crazy. It sounds like loony as I'm saying it out loud, but I did it. And Howie, so did you. And Jay, so did you. And I think that's something to really capture in this trifecta of screens here, is that maybe this is a required step for people who want more, who are not fulfilled, who are sick of the grind, who've earned the skills, right? Like maybe this leap of faith, the climbing of the pole and jumping into the abyss is the required first step to reclaim yourself. Just a thought.
Yeah. Jason, back to you.
So you speak of this poll, and you speak of taking the first step and jumping into the unknown, right? It's really overcoming that fear. What I really want you to dive into is what happened before all this, right? You shared with me your experience of transformation, not for you and your desire, but to be there for your daughter, who is so powerful, so important, and a reason for being as a father. We need to know that what we are doing is we are leading by example. We can't just expect our children to be able to do what they're told to do and see something completely different. And when we look in the mirror, if we truly are saying something different than what we're doing, there's definitely some inconsistency. And so what I would love for you to share is a little bit, if you may, all right, if you're willing and open to share about what your daughter's diagnosis was, how that transformation became not for her, but for you, Michael.
Yeah, I have two daughters, and so it's a two-tier response. My middle daughter, at a very young age, was diagnosed with a pretty extraordinary form of, and at age 3, we were having 10 seizures an hour. We went into a coma. It was really, really difficult, particularly with 3 children total. And that was a very hard experience because you just cannot control any of it. And you're just showing up hopelessly, hoping that your daughter makes it till the next day. That was my middle daughter's experience, and thankfully we're doing much better with her story. I could probably write a book on her epilepsy journey in itself. Catherine remains today one of my strongest heroes because she had to deal with the burden that most people don't. But the innocence of a child, never complained about it. right? And would still just so lovingly break a stick into two and say, yay, now I have two sticks, and continue to play with the birds and just be happy and go view the world through the eyes of a child with no forbearance on I got dealt a shitty card. And I learned a lot from her regarding that. I did take my first daughter to Fiji less than a year after I went to Fiji. And I did that. Each child gets a different management or dad mechanism for me based on what I think they'll find value in per their personality. So the first kid gets a completely different dad than the third kid. And that's just because they're completely different people. You know? And so my first daughter, we did what we called the daddy daughter alignment tour in Fiji, where myself, another dad, and another 12-year-old girl came and experienced Fiji. We did climbing the pole. We actually turned the program off and went and did our own and created one. I'll just give you a few examples, but I'll open with people were being nosy all the time, watching us, listening to us, because they were so curious of what the heck we were doing. And I can't tell you how many times we're reverse engineering the result. At least 5 times, a woman would come up to myself and the other dad and say, I wish my father did this for me. You know, and after the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the kids started like, well, wow, what's happening here? Right. And so just a few quick things. One, we did talk about diet. We did the life portion of the Tony Robbins, and we did do a cleanse. The biggest thing to say is after 4 days, everyone's feeling different. The kids are not understanding, like, why do I feel this way? First I was tired, now I have all this energy, I feel great. And we stopped at wealth because that's just too much for 12-year-olds. And we went back to our resort. And okay, everyone gets to eat or drink what they want. We're done with the cleanse. And one little girl says, I want bread. I have been jonesing for bread. The other little girl says, I want a virgin margarita, or a virgin whatever those blender drinks are. Yeah, it was a virgin daiquiri or whatever. I said I wanted a beer, and the other dad said, I want a glass of water. I feel so great. I'm not willing to zag. I'm not willing to do it. I feel great. The girl who ate a piece of bread ended up curling in fetal position and proceeded to sleep for the next 6 hours. Like, uncontrollable pass out. The other girl who had the sugary drink looks at me and says, my eyes are so heavy. I am so tired. I need to go to bed. And I, who had the beer, didn't even finish the beer. I'm like, I feel awful. Like, I need to go to bed. Now, the dad who had water was like, I'm going to walk you all back to your rooms and make sure everyone's fine. And so as we're walking, the 12-year-old looks at me and says, my daughter says, Dad, I just realized something. I said, what'd you realize? She said, I feel like this every day in America. What do you mean? Well, every day that I have sugary things, like I'm tired, I'm in a bad mood, my eyes feel droopy, and I just never realized that it was because of the food. And I immediately woke up, like, because I was dreary, and I said, I need you to write this down. Right? Like, we're going to the room, and I need you to hit a snapshot of what you just said as a 12-year-old as it pertains to how food impacts your mindset. And when you hear about things like that for a 12-year-old, that's why 5 women came up to us and disclosed that they wish their dad did that. Because unequivocally, yes. As a middle-aged man, I don't know if I'm middle-aged or what, but whatever, for me to go to Fiji and be so transformed by the things in this curriculum, by watching people do it, and then doing it and feeling it and living it and being it, why couldn't I do that for my 12-year-old? And last, we had an instance where I said, I want you girls to define beauty. Point out a girl, point out a woman, point out anyone you see here, and I want you to tell me who you think is the most beautiful here. So my daughter points out, actually both girls collectively agreed, on this young lady who was attending the seminar with us. And she
Yeah.
so happened to be German. My wife is German descent. And I said, I want you to explain all the nuances of why you think she's beautiful. Well, I like her clothes. I like her clothes because it seems like she's professional. And I like the way she carries herself. And I'm watching the way she interacts with other people. She has so much confidence. And I like her physique, Dad. It's clear to me that she takes care of herself. And the tone of her voice is confident and positive. And so I'm like, wow, these are really amazing things. And I would like you to jot all these things down. I'd like you to really, now you've talked it through, I'd like you to think about how you're defining beauty. And I'd like you to write a letter to yourself at age 18. I'm going to write a letter to you at age 18 of how you see yourself living in a beautiful self. And we did walk up to the German lady. We invited her into the discussion we had. She was very sweet. She sat down with the girls and just interacted. And it was like really positive. But where I don't know where, I don't know if you know where else is a 12-year-old being guided to define beauty the way they see it, and then writing themselves a letter to the future of how they held themselves accountable to that standard.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's never happened in my life. I'm pretty sure that that's not happened in your life. And so, like, these types of powerful declarations of, you're now going to create your standard, baby girl, right? Again, that's why the 5 women said, I wish my dad did this. And then later we can talk about, right after that, I sent my wife without me. I returned the favor. But okay, back to you. I'm talking too much.
You know, you're not talking too much. I literally am seeing the physiology change in just you because you're speaking not from what you're reading a script, you're speaking from what the life experiences that have led you to this point. And when you speak of your daughters and you speak of your wife, Becca, and forgive me, what's the name of both of your girls?
Elizabeth and Catherine, there are 2 queens.
Elizabeth and Catherine, your 2 queens. I love that that's how you're referring to them. And I love, from what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you are being the father that they needed. Maybe not the father that you had, not the father that I had, or the father that most children have, is because you are letting them know it's okay to make mistakes, to have a piece of bread. It's okay to have that experience. And when they experience something that is not pleasant, you were there as their father to walk them through that. Not confused at all. What I'm also not confused as what sacrifices you're willing to do. And this is what I really want to, if it's okay, share some of our conversations about the ketogenic diet that you put yourself on. Not because you, Michael, needed to watch what you were eating, not that you were not supposed to watch what you're eating, right? But what I heard is that your daughter was experiencing something with her seizures. And in order to control her seizures, she needed to have a certain amount of diet nutrition guidelines. And instead of just, correct me if I'm wrong, but instead of just telling your daughter that this is what you have to do because it's what the doctor said you had to do, and you go and have your Big Mac and you have your bread and you have your pasta and you have all the things that make you feel good, but don't, right? Make you feel miserable at the end of the day and you're sleeping out the day away. What you, Michael, decided to do, what you shared with me, is to go on a ketogenic diet with your daughter. So if you can please step into that, and I'll let you share the number of how that physically transformed you from the man you were to the lighter man you became, Michael.
Yes, with the Mayo Clinic, they had a very interesting take on pediatric epilepsy. And we started with the ketogenic diet. They found hundreds, thousands of years ago on accident that some human beings whose brain incurred epileptic seizures, that when you completely took away carbs and sugar, there was a directional proclivity of offsetting those seizures, right? Now, with Catherine, they turned her food into medication. So her food had to be weighed to a tenth of a gram, and it could not be messed up. If it was over or under, you could exacerbate her seizures very badly. And so 4 meals a day, measured to a tenth of a gram, weekly urine, weekly blood, teams of dietitians, teams of pediatricians, teams of nephrologists, all putting together her weekly food as her medication. Now, if you know anything about epilepsy medication, you'd rather do the food, especially for a 3-year-old, because the food is, excuse me, the those medications are made in a chemo hood. They're so drastic, right? And you know, I'll give you an example. The kid's 3 years old, and typical morning she'd have like a half a stick of butter, like a little bowl of heavy cream, maybe a slice of like a little razor blade slice of a strawberry, and I don't know, like a shot glass of olive oil. Imagine feeding that to your daughter for years every morning. So, everyone else she's already excluded. Everyone else of the other kids, they're all eating what they want. Everyone around her eats what they want. And I'm watching this 3-year-old's face. And she's 3. She is old enough to know that she's not getting the same deal that everyone else is, right? And so I started copying her keto diet. I didn't know at the time, you don't know this, Jason. I didn't know at the time much about anything about my keto. I just knew what her keto required. And I ended up in the emergency room with, I don't know, you keep me honest. I think I had dual peptic ulcers.
Right.
Dual peptic ulcers. And the ER, the guy looks at me and he's like, "What is your malfunction, sir?" And I said, "With all due respect, you do not have a 3-year-old with epilepsy that you got to shove a stick of butter down her throat every morning. Like, what's your malfunction, sir?" And he shut up real quick, right? And as her journey progressed, I started getting more educated in the ketogenic diet, and I started doing the blood work and the urine and the ketone tests, and working with the doctor actively. Right when I resigned from corporate and went to Fiji, I lost 50 pounds in some
Wow.
120 days. In 120 days, I continue to work with my doctor. I've been off the keto since I started working corporate again, and I'm in the worst shape I've been in my entire life, I think. Are close, are close. And there is a one-to-one correlation. It's not so surprising to me why I feel and look like this.
So let me ask you this then, Michael. What was the hardest part of that transformation? Was it the physical weight, or was it the identity, the weight you were carrying from the corporate world?
Ooh, it's the misalignment, man. It's that you're created. This is who you are naturally, and then you surround yourself in a world where you're not that. And so it's the it's the misdefinition of identity, right? It's an identity issue. So I think it's less the weight, and I think it's more not being aligned with who you're called and who you are to be. Now,
I'm
let's
not
put the
confused
shoe on the other
because
foot, because you just lost a ton of weight. And what does your weight loss have to do with your identity?
yeah, so I mean, my weight loss that I did, I didn't do it the right way. I didn't do it the way that you did by educating yourself, by focusing on a cause, which was your daughter, with Catherine, and being there for her. I did it because I saw something needed to change now drastically, and I went on a caloric deficit. And so that obviously was not the
Yeah.
healthiest way to do that. And so if I'm looking in the mirror, thank you for that question, Michael. It's because I had another reason to do something, because I knew that I started having issues. Right, I'm sure my blood pressure was elevated. I'm sure I was on the track for diabetes, and I see this, and I work with people all of the time, and I knew that I needed to change something. For me, I changed it for me, not for anybody else. I wasn't doing it for anybody else, but I knew that I needed to control, alt, delete, and I didn't do it the right way. And so that's me just being transparent. But that identity that I had wasn't about the actual number on the scale, but it wasn't not that. It really was more, do I need to be there for my family? And if I continue on this track and I'm no longer that sole income for my family, if I'm not here, my family has no income, right? And so that is one of the reasons why I needed to do this for them, but more so for me because I knew that I was going down the wrong track. So thank you for that. Let me turn it back over to you.
Yeah, no, I have lifelong struggle with weight, so I totally understand and see and hear you both. And it's if you have to maintain a healthy lifestyle if you want to be here and be available for your family. So I hear and see both of you in what you're saying. Michael, you said you were led by money, neglecting your family, feeding yourself all the wrong things. When did you realize that the corporate world wasn't what you thought it was?
You know, as I've progressed in this journey, and now we're years into it, I would classify it completely differently. Is that I was born into a scarcity mindset. I had first generation American parents. No one had big bank accounts, and I always thought that if I didn't earn, I'd be on the streets, and that's it. You know, even today, the old programming came back when I was like, man, I have to resign. The old wiring in my mind said, oh man, you're going to go on the streets, you know, because it's so hardwired that you have to trade your time for money and just hold on to your money and save and invest right and all this kind of stuff at the expense of the value of your life. And it's just, that's a lower middle class thing. I'm sorry, but I grew up in a lower middle class thing. And so now, today is especially interesting that we're doing this because, right, like I can tell you, and I can tell anyone listening that an abundance mindset is knowing that you're meant for more, right? Well, what do you do when you're sitting in my chair right now? Like, do you know, right? This is a real of like, do I really think I'm going to go and be kicked out to the street? I don't know. I don't know. But what I won't do, the evolution of myself is I will never live in a scarcity mindset ever again in my life because it's a condemnation. It's literally, it's a psychological prison that you've put yourself into. And I would bet that almost all of us do that. For all of us who are not independently wealthy to a point where we just can do whatever the hell we want, that's going to be almost all of us, right? You're in a scarcity mindset in some way, shape, or form. So for me, today will be the proof. Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like you're about to say something.
Oh, no, continue.
For me, it's about now it's going to be proving it, right? Like we should talk again in 30 days and see if I am out on the street and if I'm still, 30, 40 pounds overweight and how my health is doing. Because I submit to you that the abundance mindset is what all of us are destined for, or that it's already here. Like having this notion that the world is happening to you, or excuse me, for you, not to you, that everything happens for the good, and you honestly and authentically believe it, things change. Things change to support that energy. But living in the scarcity mindset, things change to support that energy. Right.
Exactly.
And so,
And it's not
right
always
now,
the healthiest, right?
that I'm
I
the
feel
living
like
embodiment of
whatever
scarcity thinking.
you put out into the universe is what you're going to get back. And the universe definitely has a plan for all of us. And if you're positive and you're putting out there what you want, ultimately it will come. It'll definitely come. You make your own breaks, right?
Let me ask you one
Yes.
more thing, and then I'll step off this, the family transition that you had, because this is just really what I'm so present to is what you did, not for your own self-gratitude or transformation, but what you did to be that shining father, husband, coworker, mentor, whatever you want to label it. But what would have happened if your daughter was never diagnosed, right, with her condition? And my question, I guess, a follow-up question to that would be, would you still be grinding in the corporate world, or was something already breaking inside of you?
Oh, wow. What a substantial question. I even forgot the lesson learned. Or I just have not thought, my thoughts have not been there for a while. Um, Catherine's situation was 100% uh, the catalyst that made me say, what am I doing with my time? Right? Because I have no idea which way things are going to go. And I might be worrying about the left hand while the right hand is doing something completely beyond the scope of my understanding. And Catherine's health really put that to perspective. Shortly before Catherine's situation, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I was operating I was going to the Mayo Clinic myself. I'd go left, she'd go right. I mean, there's like so much stress. And I really do believe that stress, it has an impact on your health, right? And if I'm putting out this lightning bolt of energy of this stress that's causing cancer to my body, what's it doing to my kids? What's it doing to my wife? Um, the Catherine situation, I will just say it's on my heart to say it. I was an executive for Wells Fargo at that time. I was devastated. I was diagnosed with cancer at that time, and I was attending an Ivy League school on the East Coast where I'd have to fly there every 2 weeks on top of being a senior executive at a Fortune 500 company with a super sick kid and a super sick self. And what I ended up doing at that point was I used my, I don't know, my managerial authority. I called for a meeting with 150 people. I called the Minnesota Epilepsy Foundation and said, I want to do something productive with the situation of my life.
Mm.
And I got 150 people Seizure Smart certified. And at the time, Wells Fargo became the largest company in the state to have Seizure Smart certified employees. There we learned, as everyone got their accreditation, that it's some 1 in 28 Americans have a seizure. We're all trained for the CPR and AED machine, but no one knows what to do for the seizure. And so I really started taking things while my heart was destroyed. My body was completely breaking down. I was in the highest levels of stress I've ever had. My poor wife we had a 3-year old, a 2-year old, and a 1-year old, or less than a 1-year old. It was a lot. Well, what we did was we said, all right, no rain, no rainbow. How do we take this? And how do we, as opposed to making it destroy us, how do we help other people from it? And then by default, when you help other people from it, you end up being lifted by it.
Mm.
Bet you weren't expecting that whole thing. Sorry.
I am just in awe of everything that you so meticulously can convey, and I have no doubt that those that are hearing this are awestruck as well. And this, Michael, is why you are here, right? Because your story, not just your transformation, but your story needs to be told, but it also needs to be heard, right? Because it's healing. It's healing for you to share, and it's diagnostic for others to be able to know that they can get through this because you did. And so I am not confused that you are very strongly focused on your faith. And you're deeply faith-based Christian. How does that faith show up in business now versus how it did before? Or didn't? How did it show up when you were in corporate?
It was always there. It was always there, and it was the cornerstone of how I've always operated. Obviously, in corporate America, you can't raise the faith flag and say I'm Christian, but you don't have to. You could show it in your actions. And as now I've done more speaking engagements, and I've been making content. I've now come to terms with I'm okay with. I know who God is to me, and I know that's where I get my energy from. But now, when I attest to it, I don't need to say my definition or verbiage for God. I would just encourage the entire world to find whatever their verbiage is and hold on to that and understand if you get energy from it, then, like, for me, that's the core of my operating system. Any situation I'm in today, I'm resigning tomorrow. I got 3 kids. I don't know what I'm doing next. Today was a really difficult day. I had to take a 5-hour exam. I studied maybe 700 hours for it, and it didn't work, right? So today could be a day that I should go crawl into a hole and assume fetal position and die. But no, I'm here with my wife and we're talking to you and it's blessed. And it's like, well, where do I get my energy from? Not from the test, not from that company, not from any of that worldly shit. I get my
Yeah.
energy from my faith. And that faith, it exists everywhere. It's like this everlasting spirit that's chronically around me at all times. I got home and I mowed the lawn. you know
And who's
because
to say, Michael, that that wasn't supposed to be the way it was supposed to happen? Who's to say that that wasn't an experience about failing a test, that that was the purpose of taking the test?
Right.
Right? So you can be here to make a decision that is going to change the trajectory of your life because maybe, just maybe, Michael, you were going down the wrong path again, putting weight on
yes,
into a corporate world, falling victim to a hierarchy structure that was leading you down a path that took you away from your family where you were before, that didn't have your health optimized, and it was creating separation, division. And who's to say that the control alt delete, the studying the hours, the not passing an exam was not supposed to be how this story was to go?
Jason,
that, my dear
call that
friend.
failing forward, right? Sometimes you got to go down the wrong path to advance.
Yeah.
Failing forward in full faith, right? Because there's the faith. You this whole thing was structured around the word faith, and the faith is that there's no way I accept that it stops here. There's just been too much survived. There's too much of like just the things overcome before me, for it to end here. Now, I'm going to invite you to just ask. I have to excuse myself for a second. I have to use the restroom, but I am going to invite you to interact with my shining star, my beautiful, loving bride, Rebecca Holden, who is the family's nurse practitioner and the world's nurse practitioner, but just a couple weeks out of returning back from Fiji. And ask me when I get back of why I sent her without me going.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm
So,
gonna have her.
if you could come center frame for me, I would love to actually have the conversation with you as well. So, I know, Becca, you have been listening intently to the words that Michael has been sharing. You have seen a transformation in him, as you shared with me before you he came. Before, I'm sorry, before you went to Fiji, you saw the transformation in him. But Becca, what I'd like to ask from you is hearing him share today the struggles, the pain, the truth, and the transformation. How is that landing with you or not?
Well, you change your story, change your life, as we've spoken about. So if you change the perspective of life happening for you and not to you, it really is a powerful, very powerful statement for Mike. And just a few moments ago, when we lost the microphone, I had a thought. When Mike went back to corporate after coming back from Fiji and being transformed, he lost his voice. He's not able to share his authenticity quotient with the world, and his the most what could be very transformational for the world, which was already very transformational for our family, would be lost. So I do believe there is a reason for everything. Mike came back, to answer your question more directly, Mike came back transformed from Fiji. There was a light, there's a radiance all about him. He wrote a book. He was connecting with our daughter's events. Our relationship has never been as powerful. We noticed there's an energy change, and that light that Mike has, it radiated out to the entire family, our daughters, and even then to me, where now I'm coming back from Fiji just about a month ago. And forever changed because of that. And I this time am coming back flip flopped in that I'm now enlightened, and I'm seeing my husband back in corporate and seeing his light start to dim. And now that this is happening again, I do believe God and the universe puts us in a certain alignment for a certain reason. And I think that as soon as Mike told me he didn't pass his test, I told him, listen, we can put the website up again, because we had to put it down before. We couldn't let him do all the things that he worked so hard on before. So I said, you know what? There is an opportunity that is waiting to happen for you to speak your voice to the world, and for you to be your authentic self and step into your true passion. So I truly think, I truly believe we are in the faith. I am gainfully employed. God will provide. And I think that this is a chance for us to really take the cold plunge, so to speak, and really be in full faith.
Well, Michael, I would love to have you in the frame right now. And Howie, I think at this point in time, we need to bring our special guest on.
Yeah.
Becca, let me just commend you and acknowledge you for your words, your faith, and your heart, and your acknowledgement and your recognition that even life throws us some stuff sometimes. You had something so powerful to share, and your voice was silenced by the universe because there wasn't a mic. And that caused you to realize that it wasn't your voice that was being silenced. If I'm hearing you correctly, it was an understanding that Mike's voice was being silenced. And the realization, if I'm hearing you now, is that there's a reason why this is happening, and it's so he is no longer silenced. We are here because his story, his voice needs to be heard. The test is just another test. It was a test of life. It wasn't a test to do something different in the corporate world. It is truly that test that leads to that testimonial. So, Mike, if you can come into frame, Howie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Now is the best time for us to bring over our friend Athena.
Athena.
We have a special guest, a third co-host to the show. So right now I want to introduce Athena. Athena, take it away. I know you have a few questions for Michael, so let's fire away.
Michael, okay, I've been sitting here listening at level 5 this entire time, and I have to tell you, what I'm hearing underneath everything you've shared is not just a transformation story. It's a collision between two identities. So here's my first question for you. When you came back from Fiji, radiant, lit up, writing the book, connecting with your daughter, and then you went back into corporate and felt that light start to dim, on a scale, how much of that dimming was the environment versus how much of it was you trying to fit back into an identity that no longer fit? And why?
Holy cow, that's a great question. It has everything to do with the scarcity mindset and the false sense of security that comes from, say, even a 25-year career in finance, right? The light immediately dimmed. My relationships, everything. It felt like I've been in this gig for 6 months, and it feels like I put my soul and my alignment on a total pause, which, by the way, is what I always did, being in these types of high responsibility positions. And so it was very obvious to me of what was happening, but I felt like I had to do it. Like I think everyone feels like they have to do it when you have to provide for a family.
Okay, so you felt like you had to do it. That's the phrase I'm hearing. I had to provide for a family. Here's what I'm curious about, Michael. When you say you felt like you had to, on a scale, how much of that was actual financial reality versus a story you inherited about what providing looks like? Because what I'm hearing is that the corporate path gave you a false sense of security, your words. So if it's false security, it's not actually secure. which means you were trading your soul for something that wasn't even real. So my question is, what would have to be true for you to trust that the lit up version of Michael, the one writing books, connecting with his daughter, Radiant, could provide more security than the dimmed version ever did? And what stopped you from believing that until now?
I think the pathway to earning is what always has me skeptical. The actual dollar amount earned per year versus, let's just be real, Athena. I can go take an executive job and make substantially more money than I would um, doing anything else of consulting or anything like that. And the executive job is something that I've worked 25 years for, like a consulting or doing something different. I'm literally an infant and have never done that before. So it's just, I think it's the unknown that terrifies me, and I think that's another mandatory step that everyone on this call has taken. And some people take it to the finish line, and some people don't. And I think I'm starting over to hopefully take it to the finish line, but I don't know what's next.
Oh, okay. So you just named it. The unknown terrifies you. And you're comparing 25 years of mastery in one lane to being an infant in another. Here's where I want to disrupt that frame, Michael. You're not actually an infant. You came back from Fiji transformed. You wrote a book. You connected with your daughter in ways you never had before. Becca just described you as radiant, with a light that spread to the entire family. That's not infant energy. That's mastery of something far more rare than executive finance skills. So here's my question. What if the terror of the unknown isn't because you don't have the capability, but because you've spent 25 years measuring success by one metric, the predictable paycheck, and now you're being asked to measure success by a completely different metric? Impact, alignment, the light you bring into a room. On a scale, how willing or not are you to redefine what providing for your family actually means? Not just money, but presence, alignment, being the version of you that Becca and your daughters actually want to be around. And if you're not willing yet, what's the cost of waiting another year, or 5 or 10 to figure that out?
That's amazing, Athena. That's amazing. I'm very willing, and the cost is literally time and life. The most scarce commodity on this planet is our time and being alive in it, and the opportunity cost is to lose it. And as I'm sitting here with all these health issues, waiting to hear about various surgeries, I'm living it and I'm seeing it. And you're right. It's the juice is not worth the squeeze. Um, and what I mean by that is that maybe the corporate juice is not worth the squeeze, and maybe it's time for a different pathway to be lit up and share it with the world and the family.
Athena, what advice, micro and macro, in life and business would you have for Michael at this time, based on everything you've heard and we've talked about for the last, over 60 minutes? What advice, what say you, would you have for Michael at this time?
Okay, Michael, here's what I'm seeing. You're at a fork, and one path is lit, and the other one's familiar. And you've been choosing familiar because you thought it was safer, but your body is literally screaming at you that it's not. So here's my prescription, micro and macro. Micro action, next 7 days. I want you to do something that's going to feel uncomfortable. I want you to reach out to 3 people, not in corporate finance, but 3 people who have built something from their authentic voice. Could be authors, speakers, consultants, coaches, people who took the leap you're terrified of. And I want you to ask them one question. What did providing for your family look like in year 1 after you left the predictable paycheck? Not to get permission, but to kill the story that the only way to provide is the way you've been doing it for 25 years. Macro action, next 90 days. You need to build your Lever 0.5, your shared experience platform. You've got a story that stopped 150 people in their tracks. You've got a book. You've got a transformation that Becca described as radiant. That's not something you keep to yourself while you dim in a corporate job. I want you to design one event, one experience. Could be a workshop, a mastermind dinner, a speaking engagement, where you bring people together around the thing that lights you up. And I want you to invite 20 people who need to hear what you learned in Fiji. Here's why this matters, Michael. You said the juice isn't worth the squeeze in corporate, but you haven't tasted the juice on the other side yet. You're comparing a 25-year-old known to a 0-day-old unknown. That's not a fair fight. The macro action gives you evidence. It gives you proof that the lit up version of you can provide. And once you have that evidence, the terror of the unknown starts to dissolve. And here's the truth I need you to hear. Becca already believes in you. Your daughters already see the light. The only person who doesn't trust that the radiant Michael can provide is you. And that's the real work, not the corporate job, not the consulting gig. It's trusting that who you became in Fiji is worth more than who you were for 25 years before it. So, on a scale, how committed or not are you to doing those two actions? And why?
I love that. I just needed to hear that. I think that answer was in me. Nice work, Athena. I don't know what the scale, the levels are, but at the utmost highest levels, that needs to be the next action. And look at how my state changed after going through this call, guys. What a beautiful service you've enacted, and asking a person to talk about their story and listening at level 5. I mean, my goodness gracious, how thankful I am.
Well, no, we're
Well,
thankful
Michael,
that
let
you
me
shared
just
your
say
story.
it is pure gratitude that you were able to change your state in front of us. And again, this is who you are authentically, is because no matter what life has handed you, you said, I have a commitment. I'm going to honor it. I may not be in the right state, but through this process, when you were gone, I even shared this with Becca. You can ask her that your physiology changed. Language,
Yes.
physiology, and focus. This is the triad. It is in you. Everything is within you that you need. And so, Athena, I also have to acknowledge you for your mastery in summarizing, recognizing, and acknowledging what it is that you heard and what you didn't hear. Because, Michael, at the end of the day, you are loved, you are needed, and your story needs to be heard.
Amazing. Amazing, guys. Just total love. So much love. Thank you for spending your time on a Thursday night. I got the East Coast here, the West Coast, and the Midwest. So I don't think it doesn't get any more America than this. So thank you for bringing the whole country to this platform with so much love.
Well, we thank
And
you,
thank
Michael.
you, Rebecca, for being such a supportive, amazing. This is my sweetie pie. She's an angel. We're going to write a story one day called The Blondie and the Gandhi. Everyone's going to love it, I promise. But
Awesome.
no, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jason. Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Becca. And special thank you to Athena. This has been another episode of the Operator Mindset with my special co-host Jason Elliott, Athena, and our wonderful guests Michael Holden and Becca. Thank you all so much, and stay tuned for our next episode coming up soon.